"Ma'am, step away from the SUV, right now." The words cut through the cool Texas evening like a siren, sharp enough to turn heads across the gas station lot. The bright white lights above the pumps reflected off chrome rims and polished black paint as a luxury SUV sat quietly beside Pump 6. Engine off, premium nozzle still ticking upward by the dollar. Judge Vanessa Carter had been driving home after a 14-hour day at the federal courthouse in Dallas. Her heels were traded for flats, her blazer folded neatly in the passenger seat, and the only thing on her mind was getting home before midnight. But now every eye in the station was on her. Officer Daniel Brooks stepped forward with the confidence of a man who had never once been questioned. Tall, broad-shouldered, hand resting near his belt, he stared at Vanessa the way some people stare at a locked door they believe should open for them. "License and registration," he said. "And don't make this difficult." Vanessa slowly turned, one hand still resting on the fuel handle. She wore a simple navy blouse, slacks, and the kind of calm expression that only comes from years of learning when silence speaks louder than anger. "Officer," she said evenly, "is there a reason you approached me?" Brooks gave a short laugh. "Yeah. People reported a suspicious vehicle. Luxury SUV. Temporary tags. Doesn't fit." A few customers glanced over from the convenience store entrance. A teenage cashier paused mid-scan. Someone near the ice machine raised a phone just slightly. Vanessa looked at the officer, then at the SUV, then back at him. "Doesn't fit what?" she asked. Brooks smiled in a way that never reached his eyes. "You know exactly what I mean." The air seemed to tighten around the pumps. The hiss of fuel, the hum of refrigerators inside the store, the distant traffic rolling down the frontage road. Everything felt louder because no one wanted to speak. Vanessa removed the nozzle, placed it back carefully, and closed the fuel door with a quiet click. She did not rush. She did not tremble. She simply reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet. Brooks took one step closer. "Hands where I can see them." She stopped, raised her gaze, and said in the same calm voice, "Officer, are you sure you want to continue?" That question should have landed like a warning. Instead, Brooks mistook it for fear. "Oh, I'm sure," he said. "Now move away from the vehicle." Two men in work boots stood beside a pickup truck, pretending not to watch. A mother loading snacks into her minivan quietly guided her children back inside the store. Phones were higher now, screens glowing. Vanessa stepped aside from the SUV and handed over her license. Brooks snatched it, glanced down, then frowned. "Vanessa Carter." He looked up again, studying her face as if the name should mean something but didn't. "What do you do, Miss Carter?" "I work in public service." "That's so," he said. "Must pay real well." Vanessa said nothing. Brooks examined the front plate frame, circled the SUV once, then tapped the tinted rear window with two knuckles. "You buy this yourself?" The question drew a few uncomfortable looks from strangers who understood exactly what they were hearing. Vanessa's eyes remained steady. "Officer Brooks," she said after reading the name on his badge, "you still have time to end this professionally." For the first time, his jaw tightened. He didn't like being addressed by name. He didn't like her tone. He didn't like that she was not shrinking. "You don't tell me how to do my job." Then he held up her license once more, staring at the line beneath her name. A title printed in small letters. 3 simple letters he had missed the first time. Honorable Brooks blinked. What is this supposed to mean? Vanessa tilted her head slightly as distant headlights turned into the station entrance. 3 black vehicles, moving slowly, deliberately, straight toward Pump 6. The 3 black vehicles rolled across the concrete like a moving shadow, headlights washing over the gas pumps in clean white beams. They stopped in perfect alignment near Pump 6, engines idling low, polished doors reflecting the neon glow of the station sign. The lot fell silent in a way that only happens when strangers sense something important is about to unfold. Officer Daniel Brooks straightened his posture and clipped Vanessa Carter's license between 2 fingers as if he still controlled the moment. But confidence can disappear faster than sound. The first rear door opened. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped out, followed by a woman carrying a leather case and another man with a county badge clipped to his belt. Their eyes did not scan the crowd. They went directly to Vanessa. "Your Honor," the woman said calmly. "We came as soon as we received your message." Brooks looked from one face to the next. "Your Honor?" he repeated, the words catching in his throat. Vanessa did not answer immediately. She simply extended her hand. The woman placed a folder into it. Then Vanessa turned back toward Brooks with the same quiet composure she had worn from the beginning. "Yes, officer," she said. "That title means exactly what you think it means." Brooks glanced down at the license again. Honorable Vanessa Carter. He had seen the letters. He just had not believed them. Behind him, someone near the soda machine whispered, "She is a judge." Another phone lifted higher. A truck driver who had been leaning against his fender stood up straight. The teenage cashier stepped outside, pretending to sweep the sidewalk just to hear better. Brooks cleared his throat. "Ma'am, if there has been a misunderstanding, there has," Vanessa said, cutting through him without raising her voice. "Several of them." The man with the county badge stepped forward. "Officer Brooks, I am Deputy Chief Raymond Ellis. We need your body camera footage preserved immediately." Brooks blinked twice. "My what?" "Your body camera footage," Ellis repeated. "And your dispatch logs. Do not turn anything off." The words landed harder than any accusation could have. Brooks instinctively touched the device on his chest, then pulled his hand away. For the first time that night, he looked unsure of where to place himself. Vanessa opened the folder. Inside were business cards, legal forms, and a printed copy of a complaint template already marked with notes. She had not prepared this tonight. She had prepared for moments like this years ago. "Officer Brooks," she said, "you approached me without cause, implied criminal conduct based on appearance, questioned lawful ownership of my vehicle, and detained me publicly while citizens recorded the encounter. Do you dispute any of that?" Brooks opened his mouth, then closed it again. The lot was still. Even the passing traffic seemed farther away now. "I was doing my job," he said at last. Vanessa nodded slowly. That phrase has protected many bad decisions. Ellis exchanged a look with the woman holding the leather case, who introduced herself with a measured tone. "Angela Monroe, counsel for the Judicial District." Brooks swallowed. Sweat gathered near his collar despite the cool night air. "No one is accusing you of anything," Monroe said. "Yet." The word lingered like smoke. Vanessa stepped closer, not aggressively, but with the authority of someone who had spent years in rooms where truth mattered more than volume. "I asked you twice if you wanted to continue," she said. "You chose to." Brooks looked around for support and found only strangers watching. No one laughed now. No one nodded with him. The same crowd that had witnessed humiliation was now witnessing consequence. Then a tow truck turned into the station lot, bright amber lights spinning. Brooks frowned. "What is that for?" Ellis answered without emotion. "Standard procedure. Your patrol unit is being held pending review." Brooks stared at his own cruiser as if seeing it for the first time. Vanessa closed the folder and handed his license back to him. "This evening is over for me," she said. "For you, it is only beginning." The tow truck's amber lights painted slow circles across the gas station canopy as Officer Daniel Brooks stood motionless beside his patrol car, watching the scene slip out of his hands one piece at a time. Just 20 minutes earlier, he had arrived certain of himself, certain of what he thought he saw, certain that a badge could turn suspicion into truth. Now strangers whispered his name from a distance, and every glowing phone screen felt like a mirror he did not want to face. Deputy Chief Raymond Ellis spoke quietly with two internal affairs supervisors who had just arrived. They were not loud. They did not need to be. Efficiency can feel colder than anger. One supervisor asked for Brooks's keys. Another requested his body camera unit. Brooks hesitated for half a second before unclipping it and placing it in the man's hand. The small device left his chest like authority leaving a room. Judge Vanessa Carter stood near her SUV with attorney Angela Monroe, reviewing notes beneath the white station lights. She looked exactly as she had at the beginning of the night, composed, steady, untouched by the chaos around her. That calm unsettled Brooks more than shouting ever could have. He wanted outrage. He wanted emotion. He wanted something he could dismiss. Instead, she gave him discipline. A reporter's van pulled into the far edge of the lot, followed by another local news vehicle. Someone had called them quickly. In towns like this, stories moved faster than traffic. Brooks looked toward Ellis. "This is getting blown out of proportion," he said, voice lower now. Ellis turned to him with the expression of a man tired of hearing excuses dressed as explanations. "No," he replied. "It is getting documented." Those words hung in the night air. Brooks glanced toward Vanessa. I did not know who she was. Ellis did not blink. That is exactly the problem. Nearby, the teenage cashier from earlier leaned against the storefront window, eyes wide as camera crews unloaded tripods. The truck driver, who had watched everything from pump 2, shook his head slowly and muttered to no one in particular. Would have gone real different if she was not important. Vanessa heard him. She walked over, not hurried, not dramatic, just deliberate. "Sir," she said gently, "it should not require status for dignity." The man lowered his eyes, embarrassed by the truth in her words. Brooks heard them too. He looked away. Monroe stepped beside Vanessa and handed her a printed statement draft. "If you choose to proceed, we can file by morning." Vanessa scanned the page. "We proceed," she said. Brooks's shoulders stiffened. "A lawsuit?" he asked. Monroe turned toward him. "Civil rights violations, unlawful detention concerns, reputational harm, and departmental negligence are all under review." Brooks laughed once, but there was no confidence in it. "For a traffic stop?" "For choices," Monroe answered. "Traffic stops end every day. Choices stay longer." The tow operator hooked the patrol unit to the lift arms and began raising the front tires. Metal clicked. Hydraulics hummed. Brooks stared at the cruiser as though some part of himself was being taken with it. He had polished that car on weekends, posed beside it in family photos, told children at community fairs to work hard and wear the badge one day. Symbols feel permanent until they move away on a flatbed. Vanessa signed the statement with a smooth stroke of black ink. Then she looked at Brooks one final time. "You saw a vehicle and imagined a crime," she said. "You saw a woman and imagined she did not belong. You never once imagined being wrong." Brooks tried to answer, but no words came. The first camera light switched on, bright and immediate. Reporters began walking across the lot. Microphones rose. Questions formed. Vanessa handed the signed document back to Monroe and opened the door of her SUV. Before getting in, she paused and spoke without turning around. "By sunrise, this story will be about more than me." Then she drove into the night, taillights fading onto the frontage road, while behind her Officer Daniel Brooks stood beneath the gas station lights with nothing left to command except regret. By 6:12 the next morning, the story had already crossed county lines. Coffee makers hummed in kitchens, radios crackled in pickup trucks, and television anchors leaned into polished desks with the kind of serious expressions reserved for moments that make people stop buttering toast. Grainy phone footage from the gas station played again and again. Officer Daniel Brooks, standing rigid beneath fluorescent lights. Judge Vanessa Carter calm, beside her SUV. The moment he held her license. The arrival of 3 black vehicles. The tow truck taking his patrol unit away. Viewers did not need narration to understand what had happened. They recognized tone long before they recognized facts. At the downtown police headquarters, Brooks entered through a side door hoping to avoid cameras. It did not matter. Reporters were already lined across the sidewalk behind metal barriers, microphones lifted like periscopes. Questions followed him through the glass. "Officer Brooks, did you target her because of race? Were you trained to make stops like that? Do you expect to be terminated?" He kept walking, jaw tight, eyes forward. Silence can look strong from a distance. Up close, it often looks like fear. Inside the building, the familiar halls felt different. Desks grew quiet when he passed. Conversations paused half a sentence. A few officers offered quick nods, but most looked down at paperwork that suddenly seemed urgent. Reputation rarely disappears all at once. It leaves room by room. Brooks was directed to Conference Room B, where Internal Affairs had already placed a recorder at the center of the table. 2 investigators sat waiting with folders stacked neatly in front of them. No anger, no speeches, just paper, time, and procedure. "Officer Brooks," said Investigator Lena Torres, "this is an administrative interview. You are required to answer truthfully." Brooks sat down slowly. "I made a judgment call." Torres opened the first folder. That phrase appears often in cases that begin badly. Her partner, Marcus Hill, slid a printed transcript across the table. "We have audio from your body camera and 3 civilian recordings." Brooks glanced at the pages, then away. Hearing your own words in writing can be more painful than hearing them spoken aloud. Across town, Vanessa Carter entered the federal courthouse through a private entrance, but news still reached her before she reached chambers. Clerks whispered respectfully. Bailiffs straightened when she passed. A young intern standing near the elevator looked nervous and said, "Judge Carter, I am sorry that happened to you." Vanessa offered a small smile. Be sorry when it happens to someone without resources, she said. Then do something. The intern never forgot those words. In her chambers, attorney Angela Monroe laid out fresh documents across a walnut conference table. Estimated damages. Prior complaints against Brooks. Department stop data by race. Municipal liability precedents. The number at the top of one page drew the eye immediately. $13,800,000. Vanessa studied it without excitement. Money was not the point. Numbers simply force institutions to feel what people have felt for years. Monroe noticed her expression. We can ask for less. Vanessa shook her head. No. Ask for what accountability costs. Back at headquarters, Brooks shifted in his chair as Torres played a short clip from the gas station. His own voice filled the room. Suspicious vehicle. Does not fit. You know what I mean. The recording stopped. No one spoke for several seconds. Hill finally leaned forward. Tell us exactly what you meant. Brooks looked at the blank wall behind them, searching for an answer that would save him. None existed. Meanwhile, City Hall phones rang nonstop. Community leaders requested statements. Ministers requested meetings. Residents requested records. Old complaints once buried in filing cabinets suddenly had new life. Stories people had told quietly for years now sounded louder because someone powerful had been treated publicly. By noon, the mayor scheduled an emergency press conference. By 1 o'clock, Brooks's administrative leave became official. By 2 o'clock, hashtags with Vanessa Carter's name were trending statewide. And by sunset, as courthouse windows glowed gold in the late light, Angela Monroe filed the first notice of claim. On the final page, beneath the amount and allegations, one sentence stood alone like a verdict waiting for its day. Respect denied in minutes can cost a city for years. The city tried to calm itself with statements, but statements are often just polished ways of asking time to erase memory. On the third morning after the gas station incident, Mayor Thomas Whitaker stood behind a blue podium in the municipal briefing room, flanked by flags and department seals. Cameras blinked red across the room. Reporters leaned forward before he even spoke. We take this matter seriously, he said, voice measured, hands folded. Our administration values fairness, accountability, and trust. It was the kind of sentence built to sound strong while promising nothing. Then questions began. Did the city know about prior complaints against Officer Brooks? Why was he still on patrol? Will the judge settle? Whitaker's jaw tightened one answer. At a time. Outside City Hall, residents gathered with homemade signs. Some were angry. Some were tired. Many were both. Across town, Daniel Brooks sat alone in his kitchen staring at a silent television displaying his own face beneath the words breaking developments. The uniform shirts hanging near the laundry room door looked like relics from another life. His phone had stopped buzzing with support the day before. Friends become careful when consequences arrive. He poured coffee, forgot to drink it, then poured it out cold. On the table lay 3 envelopes. Administrative leave notice, legal representation options, and a mortgage statement due next week. Reality always arrives by mail. Brooks replayed the gas station moment in his mind, but memory had changed shape. What once felt routine now looked reckless. What once sounded authoritative now sounded small. He remembered the line that drew the most attention online. You know what I mean. At the time, he thought it was subtle enough to hide inside tone. But cameras hear tone too. Meanwhile, in chambers high above the courthouse plaza, Vanessa Carter reviewed case files unrelated to her own situation. Defendants still needed hearings. Families still needed rulings. The law does not pause because someone embarrasses himself in a parking lot. Yet every few minutes her clerk entered with another request for comment, another interview inquiry, another message from civic leaders. Vanessa declined them all. We speak in court, she said. Not in headlines. Attorney Angela Monroe arrived carrying 2 fresh binders. We found 6 prior complaints tied to Brooks, she said, placing them on the conference table. No sustained findings. 2 involved vehicle stops. 1 involved a business owner in his own parking lot. Vanessa opened the first binder slowly. Patterns often hide behind paperwork until someone important gets harmed. And the department? She asked. Monroe slid over another page. Training gaps. Weak supervision. Statistical disparities they cannot explain. Vanessa exhaled once. Then this was never one night. Monroe nodded. No. It was one night everyone finally watched. At headquarters, internal affairs. Investigators continued interviews. Officers who once praised Brooks now described him with safer language: aggressive, overly confident, rough around the edges. Coworkers who laughed at old stories now called them concerns. Institutions rewrite memory quickly when liability appears. By late afternoon, Brooks was summoned back for a second interview. Investigator Lena Torres placed a stack of printed social media posts in front of him. Thousands of comments. Videos viewed millions of times. Community testimonies pouring in. "Do you understand what this has become?" she asked. Brooks rubbed his temples. "A circus." Torres shook her head. "A mirror." He said nothing after that. As sunset turned courthouse windows copper, Vanessa left through the side entrance and drove herself home. No escort. No sirens. Just city traffic and long shadows across 6 lanes of evening road. At a red light, a woman in the next car rolled down her window and called out, "Thank you for standing up." Vanessa smiled politely, but said nothing. She knew gratitude can be sincere and still incomplete. She had not stood up only for herself. Back in her quiet kitchen, she placed her keys on the counter and looked at the folder Monroe had left behind. On top was the claim amount, $13,800,000. Beneath it, handwritten in Monroe's neat script, were 6 words that mattered more than the number. Someone had to make them listen. Vanessa closed the folder, turned off the light, and prepared for the hearing that would begin not in the courtroom first, but in the conscience of an entire city. The first hearing was scheduled for 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, and by 7:30 the courthouse steps were already crowded. Satellite trucks lined the curb like metal sentries, cables snaking across sidewalks, camera crews speaking in hushed urgency, while producers checked watches every 30 seconds. Some people came for justice. Some came for spectacle. In public scandals, the two often arrived together. Daniel Brooks entered through the employee garage wearing a gray suit that no longer fit the way confidence once had. Without the uniform, he looked smaller, less certain, like a man surprised to discover how much identity can be stitched into fabric. His attorney, Martin Hale, met him near the elevators carrying 2 leather folders and the expression of someone billing by the hour. "Say little," Hale advised. "Show remorse if needed. Do not argue with anyone." Brooks nodded, though he had spent years doing exactly that. Upstairs, Vanessa Carter walked through a private corridor reserved for judicial personnel, though today she was not entering as the judge assigned to hear matters. She was entering as a citizen seeking remedy through the same system she had served for years. She wore a dark navy suit, pearl earrings, and the calm face that had already become familiar across news broadcasts. Clerks paused when she passed. Bailiffs straightened instinctively. Respect offered freely feels very different from respect withheld until consequences demand it. In courtroom 4B, every bench was full by 8:45. Community advocates sat beside retired attorneys. Law students filled the back rows with notebooks ready. Reporters occupied the press section, whispering updates into phones. At counsel table, attorney Angela Monroe arranged exhibits with careful precision. Still images from the gas station video, transcripts, prior complaint summaries, departmental training records, and a damages analysis whose final line had already become headline material. Brooks saw the stack and swallowed hard. Judge Harold Benton entered at exactly 9. Gray-haired, disciplined, known for impatience with theatrics. "Be seated," he said, then scanned the room over reading glasses. "This court is not a theater. If anyone forgets that, I will remind them." Even the reporters stopped typing for a moment. Monroe rose first. Her voice was steady, measured, dangerous in the way facts can be dangerous when arranged well. "Your Honor, this case concerns unlawful detention, discriminatory treatment, reputational injury, and a pattern of tolerated misconduct. My client was publicly targeted without legal basis, questioned because she appeared successful, and treated as suspicious for existing in a space where she belonged. She did not raise her volume once. She did not need to." Hale stood next, adjusting his tie. "Your Honor, my client made a fast decision in uncertain circumstances. There was no malice, only caution." The room remained still, but stillness can carry judgment. Monroe immediately approached the podium again. Then caution appears highly selective. She clicked a remote. Screens around the courtroom lit with traffic stop data broken down by neighborhood, race, vehicle type, and complaint outcomes. Numbers have no facial expressions, which is why they are hard to cross-examine. Hill objected twice. Benton overruled him twice. Brooks watched the charts appear one after another and felt something colder than embarrassment settle into his chest. This was no longer about one sentence at one gas pump. It was about everything that sentence represented. Then Monroe played the video. Not the whole clip. Just enough. Brooks approaching. Vanessa calm. Suspicious vehicle. Does not fit. You know what I mean. The recording stopped before the arrival of the black SUVs. Monroe let silence do what speeches cannot. Benton removed his glasses slowly. Officer Brooks, he said, looking directly at him. What did you mean? Brooks looked to Hale. Hale looked at the table. For a long moment, no one moved. Finally, Brooks answered in a voice softer than anyone in the room had heard from him before. I do not know anymore. A murmur passed through the benches. Benton struck the gavel once. You knew then, he said. That is the problem before this court. Outside, reporters rushed to update live feeds. Inside, Monroe submitted the damages request. The number rested on the page like a weight no one could pretend not to see. $13,800,000. Brooks stared at it as if numbers could blink first. They never do. When court resumed the next morning, the room felt different. On the first day, people came to witness a controversy. On the second day, they came to witness a reckoning. Every bench filled before sunrise. Hallways outside were lined with attorneys, students, clergy members, and city employees pretending they had unrelated business in the building. Inside courtroom 4B, the air carried that rare kind of silence that forms when everyone knows excuses are running out. Daniel Brooks entered with less swagger than the day before and more gray at his temples than anyone remembered. Stress can age a face faster than time. He sat beside Martin Hale, who now shuffled papers with the restless movements of a man searching for arguments that no longer wished to be found. Across the aisle, Vanessa Carter reviewed notes with Angela Monroe, calm as ever, one pen aligned neatly beside a legal pad. She looked neither triumphant nor angry. She looked prepared. Judge Harold Benton took the bench precisely at 9 and wasted no words. Call your next witness. Monroe stood. The plaintiff calls Sergeant Elena Price. A murmur moved through the room. Price was a 12-year veteran of the department, known internally for clean records and externally for avoiding cameras. She walked to the witness stand in full uniform, shoulders square, expression controlled. After taking the oath, she glanced once toward Brooks, then forward again. Monroe began gently. Sergeant Price, did you supervise Officer Brooks at any point? Yes. Did concerns regarding his conduct ever reach your desk? Price paused. Truth often hesitates before entering public rooms. Yes, she said. Monroe approached with a binder. How many written complaints? 5 that I personally reviewed. Brooks shifted in his chair. Hale rose quickly. Objection to cumulative characterization. Benton did not look impressed. Overruled. Monroe continued. Were any of those complaints related to assumptions based on race, neighborhood, or vehicle ownership? Price's jaw tightened. Yes. The courtroom remained still, but dozens of pens moved at once. And what action followed? Monroe asked. Price looked down briefly, then answered the question the whole city had been asking. Counseling memos. No suspension. No retraining beyond standard modules. Brooks stared straight ahead, as if eye contact might make the words more real. Monroe let that settle, then placed a printed email on the screen monitors. Subject line, pattern of escalation concerns. Sent 14 months earlier by Sergeant Price to command staff. Did you write this? Yes. Did anyone respond? Price inhaled. Slowly. No formal response. The silence that followed felt heavier than noise. Hale cross-examined with practiced urgency. Sergeant, is it fair to say policing requires discretion? Yes. And mistakes can happen without bias? Yes. So this could be a mistake. Price turned toward him with professional restraint. One mistake can happen in a night. A pattern happens over years. Even Benton looked up at that. Brooks lowered his eyes to the table. Monroe then called the gas station cashier, 19-year-old Noah Ramirez. Nervous but sincere, he described what he saw. The tone, the assumptions, the way Judge Carter remained respectful while being treated as though success itself required explanation. How did the officer seem? Monroe asked. Noah swallowed, like he had already decided the story before she spoke. Those 12 words spread through the room like weather. During recess, reporters sprinted for hallway cameras. Headlines updated in real time. Inside a witness room, Brooks finally spoke to Hale in a strained whisper. "Why is everyone turning on me?" Hale answered with the honesty lawyers usually save for private moments. "Because records exist." Back in session, Monroe presented departmental statistics and ignored every attempt to dramatize them. Numbers, dates, memos, complaints, ignored warnings. Brick by brick, the wall around Brooks disappeared. By late afternoon, Benton removed his glasses and addressed counsel. "This court has heard enough to understand that one encounter may have begun this case, but institutional indifference enlarged it." He set a hearing for damages and policy remedies the following week. As people rose to leave, Brooks remained seated for several seconds, staring at nothing. Vanessa gathered her papers, passed behind him, and said quietly enough that only he could hear, "You were never on trial for one stop. You were on trial for what you thought would never count." The final hearing drew a crowd so large that deputies opened an overflow room downstairs with a live video feed. People carried coffee cups, legal pads, folded newspapers, and expectations. Some wanted punishment. Some wanted reform. Most wanted proof that a city could still be corrected when it drifted too far from fairness. By 9 o'clock, courtroom 4B was full again. Daniel Brooks sat at counsel table in a dark suit that looked carefully chosen and completely powerless. He had shaved closer than usual, perhaps hoping neatness could suggest discipline. It could not. Beside him, Martin Hale reviewed settlement notes with the tight expression of a man trying to rescue a house after the foundation had already cracked. Across the aisle, Vanessa Carter entered carrying only one folder. She did not need stacks anymore. The facts had already done their work. Judge Harold Benton took the bench and glanced over the packed room. "We are here on damages, remedies, and findings." His voice was calm, but every word landed with the weight of finality. Angela Monroe rose first. "Your Honor, this case began at a gas station, but it did not begin there in truth. It began with tolerated assumptions, ignored warnings, selective suspicion, and a system that treated dignity as optional until public embarrassment made it expensive." She then outlined the requested award: compensatory damages, punitive components against the city, mandatory retraining costs, monitoring provisions, and community trust measures. The total remained unchanged: $13,800,000. No one in the room moved when she said it. Large numbers create their own silence. Hale stood slowly. "Your Honor, the city acknowledges mistakes and proposes meaningful reforms. But this amount is excessive for an incident lasting minutes." Benton looked down from the bench. "Counselor, some harms are measured in minutes. Others are measured in what those minutes reveal." Hale sat without another word. Benton then invited Brooks to speak if he wished. For several seconds Brooks remained still, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the wood grain of the table. Then he stood. The room leaned forward. "I thought I was being cautious," he said quietly. "I told myself I was doing my job. But I looked at a person and decided who she was before she spoke. I see that now." He swallowed hard. "I cannot ask to undo what happened. I can only admit I was wrong." It was the first honest sentence he had offered in weeks, and everyone knew it. Vanessa watched without triumph. Some apologies arrived too late to heal, yet still matter because truth finally entered them. Benton nodded once, then turned pages in a prepared order. "This court finds that the plaintiff was subjected to discriminatory treatment unsupported by objective cause, compounded by prior departmental indifference to warning signs." He paused long enough for every reporter's fingers to hover over keyboards. "Judgment is entered in favor of the plaintiff in the amount of $13,800,000. Gasps moved through the benches like wind through leaves. Benton continued before anyone could process the number. "Additionally, the city shall implement revised stop protocols, independent bias review procedures, annual public reporting, and mandatory supervisory response standards." He looked directly toward the defense table. "Trust is harder to rebuild than budgets." The gavel struck once. It sounded less like noise than conclusion. Outside the courthouse, cameras erupted the moment the doors opened. Reporters shouted questions. Phones lit up statewide. City officials disappeared into waiting vehicles. Brooks exited through a side corridor with Hale, shoulders bent under a weight no one could carry for him. Vanessa stepped onto the front plaza beside Monroe, sunlight bright across the stone steps. Microphones rose toward her. She spoke only once. This was never about money, she said. It was about cost. Then she walked down the stairs and into the crowd, where strangers made space for her without being asked. Behind her, courthouse flags moved in a light afternoon breeze, and across the city people repeated the same sentence to each other in homes, offices, barber shops, and break rooms. It finally counted. 6 months later, the gas station looked exactly the same and nothing like it had before. The same white canopy lights hummed above the pumps. The same refrigerator doors inside clicked open and shut. The same highway traffic rolled past in long ribbons of sound. But there were new security cameras mounted higher, new signs posted near the entrance, and a framed newspaper clipping behind the register that simply reads City Settle's landmark case. Places remember even when concrete does not. Noah Ramirez still worked evenings there, though now he was taking community college classes in criminal justice. He had learned that witnessing something can change the witness too. Around 7:15 on a warm Thursday night, a familiar black SUV turned into the lot and eased beside Pump 6. Noah recognized it immediately. So did two customers near the ice freezer. Judge Vanessa Carter stepped out wearing jeans, a light sweater, and the kind of ordinary calm people mistake for simplicity. She smiled when Noah waved through the glass. "Evening, Judge." "Evening, Noah," she called back. "How are classes?" "Passing everything," he said proudly. "Good," she replied. "Keep going." Some victories echo through strangers' lives. Vanessa began fueling the vehicle herself, unhurried as ever. No cameras chased her now. No reporters waited behind parked vans. Public attention had moved on to fresher storms, as it always does. But policy had not moved on. The city had new reporting systems, revised training, monthly audits, and supervisors who suddenly returned calls. Complaints that once disappeared now generated case numbers and deadlines. It was not perfection. It was progress, which is usually slower and less glamorous than people hope. Across town, Daniel Brooks lived in a small apartment above a tire shop on the service road. He worked inventory for a warehouse distributor 40 hours a week and delivered packages on weekends when rent approached faster than paychecks. He had learned the quiet arithmetic of consequence. That evening, after finishing a route, he stopped for gas in an older sedan with faded paint and one hubcap missing. He turned into the lot without looking up, then froze when he saw the black SUV at Pump 6. Some moments feel arranged by fate, even when they are only timing. Brooks sat behind the wheel for several seconds, hands resting on the steering wheel, engine idling low. Then he parked 2 lanes over and stepped out slowly. No one noticed him first and stiffened. Vanessa turned at the change in atmosphere before Brooks said a word. He looked older than 6 months. Not broken, just stripped of illusion. "Judge Carter," he said. She regarded him calmly. "Mr. Brooks." He nodded once, accepting the name. "I did not come to bother you." "Then do not," she said, not unkindly. He glanced toward the pavement. "I pass this place sometimes and keep driving." He managed a humorless smile. "Tonight, I guess I was tired of doing that." Vanessa closed the fuel door with a quiet click. "What do you want?" Brooks took a breath that seemed heavier than it should have been. "To say I understand now." She waited. Silence remained her strongest tool. "At work now," he continued. "People look at uniforms different than I used to. Delivery vest, warehouse badge, cheap car, old shoes. They decide things fast. Not the same way, but fast." He shook his head. "I never noticed how quickly people sort each other." Vanessa studied him for a long moment. "Being judged inconvenienced you," she said. "Being judged endangered others." The truth landed cleanly. Brooks nodded. "I know." She picked up her receipt and tucked it into her purse. "No," she said softly. "You know more than before. That is not the same thing." Noah watched from the doorway, pretending to stock gum. Brooks looked as if he wanted forgiveness and knew he had not earned the right to ask for it. "Will it ever be enough?" he asked. Vanessa opened her driver door. "That depends on whether you miss your old life or change your new one." Then she paused and added the only kindness he would receive that night. "Start with how you treat the next person. Nobody is watching." She got in, started the engine, and drove toward the highway, taillights shrinking into darkness. Brooks stood beneath the same lights where he once mistook authority for power. The pumps hummed. Traffic moved. Noah returned to the register. And in the reflection of the convenience store window, Brooks finally met the man who had cost himself everything.